right, welcome back for another episode of Last to Know. This is the video series where I talk about those final issues, those last issues in a run, the end of all series, mini-series, ongoings, etc. Those last issue books that are actually worth a few bucks more than you might expect. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. If you got any recommendations, like I say, drop them down in below because there are plenty more books to cover here in this series of final books, last issues to know. So I'm open for your suggestions. So drop them down below if I haven't talked about a book that you know is selling for more than others might expect. With that all said, if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, so let's take a look at this week's selection of books. Yes, last time out, I did those second to last issues to know, those next to last issues, and there are still plenty of more to cover, but I figure I'll do that series once we do a few last, and then we'll pick out a few chunks to, kind of cover those every so often. But for now, back to those last issues that you're all expecting to see. Now, first one up goes back to the 90s, I want to say. This was could have been early 2000s by the time this thing came out, but this was the Incredible Hulk run ending at issue 474 before they kind of restarted and redid the series again with a new number one. Marvel has done so many new number ones over the years that I've kind of lost track on a lot of series, especially Amazing Spider-Man. But here, following up, I love the old legacy numbering. Ending at 474, however, calling back, or a nice little callback to that very first issue with the cover. Can't go wrong there. Now, this is not going to make you rich if you find this one, but you might be surprised to know this is still a $10 to $20 type of book. That's what it sells for. And as far as listings, well, they're kind of close to that average as well, with the $15 to $25 being, kind of the broad strokes, kind of, outliers there. Or I should say, there are outliers on both ends. You might find a cheaper copy. You might find a more expensive copy, but by and large, the range is around 15 to 25 bucks for this book. I also want to point out the high listing out there at the time of when I made this deck, and it was a couple of weeks ago, to be honest, was a $200 CGC 9.8. So I'm not sure if that one's still out there, but it was there when I was making the deck and getting ready to film this bad boy. So with that said, those 9.8s aren't that plentiful, as you might expect. I mean, it is the final issue. Not many people go and grade the last issues like they would say a first issue, but there are 16 9/8s in the census currently, so if you find a nice shiny copy, you're going to join, not a very large group. So like I said, there's that one listing for $200. That's only one of 16 currently. So, keep that in mind. With that said, we're going to stick with our big green theme here for one more second and get over to his cousin, She-Hulk, and look at the Sensational She-Hulk number 60. And once again, final issue. I'm sure you guys knew about this one already, but if you didn't, well, here you go. You can see I like the little meta bit that they have here where she's holding the very first issue in her hand along with the Savage She-Hulk issue and, being presented there as well, her first appearance. So it's kind of fun. This issue in and of itself also is, just like the regular Hulk, a callback to the first issue of this run and of this series. So it's kind of nice little juxtaposition there, beginning and ending, kind of mirroring each other. I don't know. I thought it's a nice little touch personally. And this particular book, this final issue number 60, does pretty well as it sells for about 30 to 50 bucks on average, raw copies. Listings could be anywhere from about 50 to 80 with a high ask seeking $140. That's right. $140 for a raw copy of this final issue 60. So that's kind of a big number. Again, that is more of an outlier, but I do like to show that high-end kind of watermark that some people are seeking just because, want to keep things in context. In case you're out at a shop, you're trying to decide whether the copy you find there is worth picking up. I mean, say you find this book in your LCS and it's like 20 bucks and it's a really nice copy. Based off of these prices, 20 bucks may not be a bad price. So that's the kind of decisions I'm trying to help you make by giving you this information, because you never know what you might stumble across when you're out there wandering your local shops, new shops, if you're on a vacation or you're in another area, checking out a random shop, etc. With that all said, this one, unlike the Incredible Hulk final issue, does have a lot of interest, and there are 109.8s already. So there is a healthy group graded for this one already, but still, you can always join that pack if you find a nice shiny copy out there. A nice crisp, no spine ticks, nice near mint plus copy could still do well for you, depending again how much it costs you. With that said, we are going to go back to our Green Goliath's friend and fellow defender and look at one of my personal favorites, the Silver Surfer, and his final issue of this Volume 2 run. I'm not counting the Mobius run in there because that was more of a mini, but you had the OG run in the 70s, and then you had this longest running series for the Silver Surfer that ran mostly through the 80s and 90s that ended with issue 146. And this is one I always look out for, and it still does all right. I mean, this final issue of Silver Surfer is about $15 to $35 on average, which it's been kind of higher before. It's been lower. It's kind of, gone up and down here and there, but it's always worth grabbing if you can find it. This final explosive issue. It even says it right there on the cover. I mention that all the time. Not all of these say last issues, but some of them do. She-Hulk just did. Surfer here does announce it saying explosive final issue. So whether it's planned or just not really planned. And I feel like this one was more of a print run not being as strong as they might have hoped. So they just kind of ended the series, but not like a planned ending, like say, what had a planned ending, like Walking Dead and things like that, or Invincible, if you will. Like those, yes, went for a long time, but there was an ending in mind the whole time. Here, this is just more, well, sales aren't that strong, so we're going to have to end it, and we'll end it in 4 or 5 issues, and then they kind of wind the story down just to kind of meet it. As opposed to some others that might just cut off and end with no announcements, leaving you on a cliffhanger, just stop printing, and then maybe they come back, wrap things up like Ghost Rider, or maybe they don't. So, with that rambling aside, average listings on this Silver Surfer 146 are kind of in the same range, 20 to 40 bucks, with somebody looking for 150 bucks for one of these, which that's a pretty tall order there, Nordberg. But hey, you can ask what you want to ask. May not get it, but hey, you can ask it. But 20 to 40 is still a strong price for this book, I think. So if you can find it, and again, it's not something that everybody out there knows, and everybody's like, oh yeah, that 146, that final Silver Surfer, that's a $20 to $40 book. Not everybody knows that. So you can sometimes pull these types of things out of dollar bins. So this is the kind of weird, odd thing that I like to look for myself. So I'm just sharing that information with you. And much like the Incredible Hulk, this one doesn't have a lot in the census. There's only 10 9.8s for this particular final issue. So again, you find a really nice copy, you can join a pretty exclusive collection in that 9.8, as there are only 10. All right. With that, sticking in the same kind of time frame, we're also going to look at the final issue of another one of my favorites, Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. This issue, boom. This is the end of this series, ending with issue 380. 380 issues was, again, the longest run of Daredevil, basically. We've had multiple volumes since. And to say multiple, we've had a lot. Again, probably like 10 different volumes since then. But this volume went 380 strong before they ended it. And this is another book that does about 20 to 40 bucks on average as far as sales go, with asking prices also in that same kind of range, with highs seeking about 50. So not so much of an outlier here on those asks. It's pretty tight window here on what this thing is selling for, as well as what people are asking for. So keep this one again in mind, because again, not a lot of people know the ending of Daredevil ended at 380. They just see random issues, 300, blah, 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 blah. It goes on forever, they think, but it doesn't. It stopped here. So with that, keep an eye on that number. Remember this cover, so when you're flipping through boxes, these types of things hopefully will jump out at you. Now, this is another one kind of like the She-Hulk, where there's a decent number in the census with 58 graded copies of this one in 9.8. So sometimes these things do get graded, and a lot of people know about them, and a lot of people seek them out and try to get those high grade copies, while other times, have you seen, there aren't as many graded. 58 is a decent number, but not as high as that 100 so far for that She-Hulk 60. Now, that's our first chunk of books. Before we get to the next section of 4 books, I want to remind all of you out there who need supplies, use my code RENA10 over at BCW and save 10% off your entire order. You get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes. your CGC boxes, your top loaders, even pages for your cards, top loaders for your cards, basically anything to keep your comics and collectibles safe. You can find a product over at BCW. And if you got to buy you those supplies, you hate having to spend money, but you might as well save some money while you do it and save 10% off using my code RENNA10. You help out the channel, you get yourself a few bucks back. What do you got to lose? So keep that in mind when you got to buy your supplies. Now, I'm going to stick with Marvel for the next chunk of books because we still got plenty we can talk about here on this series. And the next one may not be a title a lot of you are aware of, and you may see it and you may not know how many issues it even ran for because it didn't last all that long. And the series I'm talking about now is Silver Sable. Yes, Silver Sable and the Wild Pack was rumored for a while to be a movie with Sony. She was going to team up with Black Cat. There was going to be a standalone movie. Who knows what the heck Sony's doing with this property at this point? But Silver Sable and the Wild Pack, as far as the 90s comic goes, ends with issue 35. So not a ton of a run here, but more than you might have expected. So 35 issues before they called it quits on Silver Sable and the Wild Pack. And this one sells for about $10 to $25 on average, which isn't too bad. And I know people are going to point out, well, the black cover, hard to find in high grade. That makes very little difference. Yes, some ticks might show easier on a black cover than they do on other covers, but those ticks are there regardless on a lot of books. So keep that in mind as well. It's not like this attracts more damage than another type of book. It's just, it might be easier to spot for the casual grader. With that said, average listings for this particular book are more like 20 to 30, with a high looking for about 45 bucks. So again, you may not have been aware of that yes, there is a Silver Sable and the Wild Pack comic worth knowing, because if you find it in a cheap box, a dollar bin, you might have found 20 to 30 bucks. Just saying. And with that, if you find a really nice high-grade copy, you'll join a very exclusive group, as there are only 3 9.8s of this particular one. 3. All right, moving on. Spider-Man 2099, a fun series, Miguel O'Hara, and it might surprise you to know that 2099 series actually didn't last all that long. This ended with issue 46. So it seems like something that like, oh, 2099, Spider-Man 2099, everybody knows Spider-Man 2099. And yes, there have been a couple of different series over the years, but none of them have really lasted all that long. 46 issues ain't that long when you think about it. That's, a couple of years. Couple of years is not much when you think about how long this character has been around for decades. So with that said, average sales on this one, it's only 10 to 20 bucks. So it's only 10 to 20 on this one right now. But if we get some traction, we get some more announcements, maybe another appearance in the next Spider-Man animated movie, who knows? We might see Spider-Man 2099 gain interest once again. But for now, 10 to 20 bucks is all that it's getting. Asking prices, however, are looking for 25 to 50, with 9.8 seeking $250. So keep that in mind as well. That's a big number for a 9.8 when you consider the asking prices on the raws. With that said, the group of 9.8s ain't that large, as it's only 17 copies currently. So once again, small batch of 9.8s to join if you find a nice copy out there for yourself. With that, we're going to jump far ahead now. Sticking with Marvel, but jumping out of the 90s, because this was what, 96? Yeah, August of 96 right there on the cover. Jump from the 90s into, the 2000s. This might have even been 2010s. I can't remember. 2012. Yeah, so April of 2012 here. X-23. The first run of X-23, Laura Kinney's comic book, only lasted 21 issues. So once again, sometimes it may be surprising to know that some of these series didn't last all that long, or they might have lasted longer than you might have expected. Like, would you have thought Silver Sable and the Wild Pack would have had a longer run than X-23? This is before she got repackaged as the all-new Wolverine, mind you. But X-23 ended in April of 2012 with this pretty awesome cover, by the way. I dig this. And this one does pretty well. Who did the cover? I can't seem to remember, but this is still 15 to 20 bucks, which might surprise you. Issue 21, it seems just like it might be a random issue. No announcements that this is the final issue in any way there on the cover. So when you find it out there, you just got to know what you're looking at. 15 to 20 bucks is the average sale, while asking prices are more like 20 to 40. So again, good knowing this kind of information because you could find it for cheap. You might make a few bucks on it, especially if you find a 9.8, which is only a group of 21 right now. So, not a tiny batch, but still nowhere near some of the other books we've looked at already. And with that, we're going to go, sticking with Marvel for one last time, back to the 90s again with a very odd property. Now, this is an oddball title that I'm not even sure a lot of you would have remember that it existed, but I always look for this stupid thing for some reason, and that's James Bond Jr. Yeah, it's James Bond Jr. They made a comic book of this, and there was also a cartoon, I believe, way back in the day. But this only lasted a dozen issues, and this special all-villain issue of James Bond Jr. was the last one. Now, this thing has had a wild ride, as I've seen this thing sell for quite a bit of money, and then also sell for absolutely peanuts. So, weird titles do that, because sometimes people don't know what they have, and they sell it, and then you don't see it for months, and then other people know what they have, and they find that other weird collector who can't find this and wants it really bad, and then they end up spending money on it. So, one of those oddball things. Here, at the time I did my research, average sales $10. Not very impressive. Average listing is only $10 currently. But there are some people who, like I said, keep in mind that this was high sales at one time. They're looking for 75. They remember. I remember seeing this listed for like $100 plus at different times, because it's just one of those weird titles. I don't know the print run on it. I can't imagine it being very large, and no one has had the guts to have one of these graded and get a 9.8 as of yet. I'm sure there's got to be a really nice copy out there somewhere, but maybe not, because this is targeted at kids. So you might have found this one on those spinner racks jammed in with the Archies and the other Animaniacs type books and things like that, which could get beaten up, because I know in a lot of shops, they'll put the kids' books on the spinner racks, and spinner racks are unforgiving on comics. They are not really meant to keep your comics in very nice shape by putting it in those wire metal racks, tilted forward to be manhandled and spun and bent and pulled. And yeah, many comics have gotten destroyed on those old school spinner rack. As cool as they look, and as cool as it would be to have one, they do not treat your comics very well. With that said, the highest graded copy is a 7.0, and there's one. Keep that in mind. Now, I got one more chunk of books to get to, but before we get to that, I want to remind you also, if you haven't tried Whatnot, use my link down below and get yourselves a free 15 bucks off your first purchase. It's 15 bucks to spend on whatever you want, with whomever you want, no strings attached. You try out the app, you get 15 bucks on your first purchase to give it a shot. There's comics, cards, toys, sneakers, all kinds of different things. It's not just comics, auctions, buy it nows, etc. 15 bucks just to give it a look. Go ahead, sign up, get your free 15 bucks, and never try it again. Just saying, it's there if you want to give it a shot. With that said, our final book, or final chunk of books, is I think going to come from the DC side of things, as I'm starting it off here with Starman. Yes, classic run. A lot of people remember this James Robinson run. It actually lasted 80 issues, which is a decent run for a title like this. So 80 issues of Starman before the end. And no, you're not going to get rich if you find a Starman 80, but ending in 2001, lasting throughout most of the 90s, this is still a $5 book, right? Listings, well, they're looking for 10 bucks. Some people are seeking more like 36. So you never know. Could see that interest, gather ground once again at some point. But for now, it's still pretty cheap, but it's still something worth knowing, especially if you can find it in high grade, because you can join an exclusive club of 9.8 currently. So you want to get a nice crisp 9.8 of that final issue of Starman, big Robinson fan, go for it. You're going to join one other person at present. Now, let's go back to some Bronze Age. Yeah, Bronze Age horror a little bit. Let's check out The Unexpected. This is the last mind-tingling issue of The Unexpected. Again, sometimes they announce it, other times it's left up for grabs to know. This is issue 222. No Penny, No Paradise. See the demon around the shoulders. Pretty cool cover. Yes, current sales, only about $5. So again, not going to make you rich, but Bronze Age horror has been picking up steam of late. So keep that in mind, as most listings are looking for more like 10 to 20 these days, with highs seeking $25. Just something to keep an eye on, something to keep track of. It's, just good information to have and a good issue to know, I think. And once again, if you find a nice crisp copy out there, exclusive club of only 4 9.8s currently. So only 4. You can join and be number 5 if you find a nice crisp one, nice shiny, no ticked, sharp cornered copy. Who knows? Just keep it in mind. Sticking with that, let's also check out Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg the Raid, which ended after only 5 issues. So once again, not all of these issues have to have gone 100, 300 issues, 36 issues, yada, yada. Sometimes they end at 5. That's all they lasted. Classic Joe Kubert cover. Pretty cool. Blitzkrieg number 1 is $10. That's an average sale, but that was for a low-grade copy, mind you. Beat up, well-loved, some tears, some rips, definite foxing, and the crunched-up spine. Only 10. It's still got $10. Mind you, listings are more like 20 to 40 for this particular book, while a high is seeking $50 raw for what amounts to it just looks like some random war book that most people might not be aware of. And I know you probably flip past a lot of war books like I do because I'm not a big war comic fan. Sometimes I get in the mood to read a good war comic, but mostly when I'm flipping through those dollar bins, those cheap boxes, I start seeing war titles and I just, not for me, because I don't honestly know a lot about them. But if you start training yourself to remember some of these covers, you might start seeing and finding some issues that are worth more than others might be aware of. With that said, you find a really nice one. Once again, very exclusive group with only 2 9.8s currently. 2. So, with that, our last book here is a popular one. I'm sure you all know this issue by now. You might not have known this was a final issue, but I'm sure you know the cover. It's been homaged a few times of late. I even have a few that I just picked up in my Mark Spears blind bags. But yes, this Dave Stevens, Elvira, House of Mystery, number 11, was the final issue of this run of these Elvira books over at DC. So once again, you might not have known that. You probably just thought it was just, hey, it's a Halloween spectacular. It's a special issue. Nope. It was a comic series, but it ended here with number 11. So it is the final issue of the run, and it is the last issue to know, though you probably already knew it if you didn't know it was a last issue. And yes, the original Dave Stevens does very well these days, still selling for $70 to $130. Like I said, it's a popular book that's gotten homaged a few times, especially of late, because we were just past Halloween. But listings on this one as well are $90 to $150 raw. So again, keep that in mind when you're out there digging in a box and you see this and it's like $20. It's definitely probably worth your time to grab it for $20 unless it's really beat up. And a 9.8 listed for $895. $900 for a 9.8 is the current asking price. That doesn't mean it's going to get met, but that is a high asking price right now and part of a group of 48. So a decent number of 9.8s for this book, all things considered. Keep that in mind as well. But there are more than 48 people who want this book in a high grade. So also factor that into your thinking as well. And with that said, that is the final book of our list of lasts to know. So until next time, I want to say thank you for hanging out. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for checking this out. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully I gave you a few more books to keep in your mental Rolodex when you're out there hunting. And let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I'll see you all later with some more content next time. All right.